Hey there Workforce, Chris here, and I just finally had a chance to read through the full 4.2 patch notes in depth, listening to Brian's video as I was doing it, making sure there wasn't anything that really stood out to me, and it's a lot. It's a absolute crazy amount of content to get over, and so, you know, obviously we're getting more main story, new beast tribes, the new dungeons. These were all things we expected. Submarine just seems to be a rework of Airship. But there's actually a few changes here that I thought were a huge change to the gameplay, and in my opinion, are changing the direction of the game. Now, the first of these is housing. They're adding 6 wards to each of the 4 districts. This is a huge change. Also in that they're actually going to be restricting purchases for personal use for a limited time to guarantee that all those people with free companies have a chance to get in on housing. They'll evaluate upon the release of 4.2 and decide, you know, are they going to lift that restriction? And even then, they're saying they will also be permitted to only own 1 private and 1 free company estate per World Service account. Now, this doesn't actually address whether or not they're going to change the people who already own multiple. I don't see anywhere in the way this is written that is absolutely clear on what they're going to do about those. Maybe as long as they maintain it, they're just grandfathered in. And that's kind of an unfair advantage, but I don't know how to better fix that. It'd be even more unfair, in my opinion, if I'd worked to own a house in a way that the game did not stop me from doing, and then they just took them away. Because this isn't the real world where you can just kind of cheat things that weren't intended. This is programmed, and so with the exception of actual exploits, which are usually patched very quickly, something like this has been allowed to go on for a very long time, which in a sense is them condoning it. Now it goes on to say that the resale of plots they've found a way around that. So they're actually going to, when you resell a plot, they're going to actually make it unavailable for an amount of time. And they're not telling us what that amount of time is. I don't know if that amount of time will be constant, but that'll make it to where you can't just pay somebody to relinquish the plot and then go sit over there during off hours. They relinquish the plot, you buy it, and so there's kind of this direct sell component. It puts it back in the hands of, maybe it becomes available upon the next server reset or something like that. They have said that there's going to be more details on all of this, but they're going to do all of that after they take the servers down for the patch, which makes total sense. They also changed a ton of things with the cosmetics of houses, and so if you own a house, you're really interested in that, and I encourage you to go over to the patch note to either watch Brian's full-length video or go over to the patch notes link that is in either of our descriptions and scroll down to the section that is about housing. I am going in order, and so if, you know, based on how far you are into this video, that should tell you roughly how far through those patch notes you need to scroll. They're also allowing you to do things like teleport directly to another person's house and things like that. There's all these little quality of life features in and around housing that is going to be very nice. But for the sake of time, I'm just going to keep moving. So the Golden Saucer got a fair number of changes. The big one is the new fashion contest. This is a huge change that they're starting to add things, change gates. It's nice to see Golden Saucer kind of getting a refresh. In my mind, this would be the beginning of getting people interested in that so that you could bring in things like Blitzball. Getting people interested in content outside of the traditional battle system. So refreshes to housing, refreshes to Golden Saucer. These are good things for the game. Battle system. This is a big one. This is going to leave a lot of players feeling like their class either got a whole lot better or a whole lot worse. And honestly, most people are going to fall into one of those two camps regardless of the changes. Because the quality of your class is balanced by the content. And so in PvE content, they're going to scale it based on what they assume all classes are doing, not just your class. So if all classes get a buff but yours, they're going to make the next round of content a little harder, and then you're going to feel like you're underpowered. The other side of that is if you get this huge swing to be more powerful, that really has to be relative to everybody else. And so seeing them take a few classes and make very minor changes, and seeing them take a few classes and do these massive overhauls, kind of makes me a little nervous about the balance of classes. Even just in a PvE standpoint, if you have classes starting to pull from the tank, that's a problem. That's a sign that your DPS isn't evenly balanced, because if the content is balanced for the total DPS output, you can't have that person just slow down, because odds are there's another DPS class that couldn't make it up. You need everybody doing everything they can, and you need a tank that can keep up. It was interesting to me that the tanks, the Paladin and the Dark Knight, had so few changes, and then the warrior just had this massive list of things like potency increases and things like that. That was kind of odd to see. As a black mage, looked like I got some changes to recast timers and got those reduced and stuff, so I look forward to seeing how that feels. I don't personally play with meters, mostly because I play on PlayStation and Mac, and it's not an option. Not necessarily because I would not download them if they were available to me. But it'll be interesting to see, and there's quite a few comments, then I'll go over those at the end here, that I'm already seeing on Brian's video that are talking about people who do have access to this data and what they feel it's going to do. PvP, Warrior Upheaval went away, Red Mage Monomancy went away, and a handful of balances got done. Once again, this is all a context thing. So you can read those and look at your class and go, oh wow, that got more powerful, or oh no, that got worse. But within the context of everybody else, that's where you're going to get a feel for what that balance means, especially in PvP. So I read them, and all it tells me is that they are listening. So I want to give them the benefit of the doubt as the developers. They're listening, they're doing movement, and we're hoping that it's movement in a good direction. I'm sure the aim was good, but it doesn't mean that what they hit was good. And we'll just have to see, as you know, in the coming weeks, does that make the game better or does that make the game worse, especially for the people who kind of felt like they were on the out. Final Fantasy is unique in that it's one of the games where you can really level a lot of classes and enjoy many of them to varying degrees, and that can shift, right? Oh yeah, most of that patch cycle I focused on my warrior, and then most of that patch cycle, and you can do that constantly. Because of the way like the tomes refresh and stuff like that, when the new tome comes out, as long as you push all your new tomes into that other class, it can be really up to the same speed as a top-end character, even though you changed classes between patches. So that's kind of unique about Final Fantasy, and so to see them constantly making changes to the class says that they see that the classes are a fluid thing, and based on the meta, which we set as the players, they have to constantly try to adjust people back to the middle. If we find a way to stray over here, they have to kind of drive us back to the middle so that you don't have the people that want to play on this side of things feeling left out when a certain class gets huge advantages over everybody else. Obviously, the new dungeons and raids, we got plenty of information on that. That's not shocking. And all the gear to go with it, those are all repetitive things. We expect those every major content cycle. You know, the evens and the odds tend to be almost identical to each other. Not shocking at all. Can't wait for 4.25 to see how like relic gear and relic armor affects that. Don't have an official launch date on that I've seen yet, though lots of speculation going around. So it's not that far off in the future. By the time we get through most of this, we should be just getting hungry and it should drop. That would be a well-timed patch. Now, another big change to PvP was the teams. You can only belong to one team at a time. Players on a free trial cannot be on a team. It's a party of 4 to 6 players, but it looks like you can actually have more people on the team than you can have in combat. So you kind of have those alternates. You're going to be able to confirm team creation. They went over that. As we start to talk about PvP a little more, I'm looking over my notes here. The match length has been changed from 8 to 6. We knew that. Sudden death will still occur. That's a nice thing. The culling time debuff stacks have been adjusted as follows. 1 is 90. It went from 90 to 105 seconds. 2 is 105 to 120 seconds. 3 is 120 seconds to 135 seconds. 4 is 135 to 150 seconds. And 5 is from 150 seconds and onward. So the culling time ends quicker after KO. That makes sense. The matches got shorter. And the speed at which the adrenaline gauges fills has been adjusted, which once again makes sense. The matches got shorter. Respawning, you now respawn at the location where you died after a certain amount of time passed. Your MP and TP are fully replenished. It kind of told us this is what's going to happen. It is officially in the patch notes. That's what's happening. Medals. You can only hold medals based on your class type now. So tanks are going to be able to hold the most, healers are going to be able to hold the least, and then you have your melee and your ranged. That makes sense, right? You're trying to put it where the other team can get to it, and they can't just sit back. That's also typically your players with more life, more armor. So, you know, it's natural you want to kind of put it anyway. And these caps are big. I mean, tanks, 200 medals is a ton to carry. Any that they exceed that will appear at that location. And each of the medal types are going to have an icon based on how many medals it is. And that icon will be a larger and larger loot bag as it goes through the tiers. 1 to 25, 26 to 50, 51 to 75, 76 to 100. And then actually there's a little icon on there that has like a little slash through it if you cannot pick it up because it's above your maximum. Awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Lots of other changes. Then we move on into the fact that elemental resistance have been removed for characters. And this is probably just allowing them to start balancing elemental damage on fights and things like that. And elemental resistance was always kind of a weird thing to me, in that it was like this holdover from other Final Fantasy games that really didn't translate into the interpretation of an MMO that Final Fantasy XIV has become. So this makes sense that they would remove these. Now, if you have them, you can still trade them in, and they'll be traded in for transfusion. So you'll get a different materia in its place. Obviously, this is going to be like your fires, your winds, your ices. No shock there. Anything with elemental resistance or anything like that is going to have its effect either changed or removed. And if it's given as a quest reward or something like that, it'll be no longer available from vendors, so they're just going to phase that out of the game. Due to this is going to cause things like bonuses from miners and botanists are going to change. Anything dealing with elemental is going to change, and that, once again, that's just going to ripple out into anything it's going to ripple out into. So it seems like a simple change on its face, but you'll notice it just about everywhere. The maximum number of items per slot has been increased from 99 to 999. Fantastic. This is something long overdue. I understand that it probably takes much more work as a programmer than to us, where we're like, oh, you're just adding a digit. Very exciting. It's going to allow a lot more items to stay in game at one given time, and so that's going to allow people like crafters and gatherers to really be able to play the market a little more to their whims and a little less based on inventory management. The maximum of 99 items sold in markets and traded at vendors is unchanged. And so that's kind of an interesting way to do that. We're going to allow you to store more, but when you're trading to other players and stuff, we're still going to be dealing with these same caps. Items exchanged for gil still have a limit of 99 per slot. So this isn't necessarily going to affect all items in game. It's mostly geared towards, like I said, crafters and gatherers. The unique classification has been removed from certain items, such as rewards given in seasonal events and on the Mog Station. Awesome. I think there are way too many things in the game classified unique from the standpoint that they don't stack. This is things like Ifrit's Horn and Inferno Horn. These are things that need to have that removed, and they have. So there's new minions, new mounts. Can't wait to see those in game. They have a couple of screenshots up, but I assume there's more than just that. So that'll be awesome. Glamour dressers and glamour plates have been added. So you'll go to an inn and you'll access a glamour dresser. It's this beautiful thing. When you open it up, it like sprawls out. There's gems. There's glowing everywhere. Awesome. And you select the gear you wish to transform, and you use a glamour prism. So there's still going to be that kind of consumable piece. The gear will be transformed into glamour and stored inside the dresser. Awesome. Now, once gear has been transformed into glamour, it can no longer be used as an item. It's gone. It's an irreversible process. It consumes it. It is removing items from the game, which is wonderful because it's going to allow people to feel like they're not using inventory on that, and they're going to want to go out and kind of buy some of these items off the market and consume them for the sake of it. And based on the number you can hold in there, if they make that unlimited one day, then that's what's going to allow people to go out. You make achievements like, oh, you have to own this mini or this percentage of the total number in game. That's going to make people want to go out and buy all these low-level items off of everybody. But it's an irreversible process. It's in there. You own it. Transformed gear no longer exists as an item. It cannot be returned to your inventory or armory chest. They state this a couple of different ways. It's gone. Glamour stored in the dresser cannot be applied to Adventurer Squadron NPCs, which is kind of a bummer. I'd love to see that changed. And some gear cannot be transformed into a glamour. I'm sure there's a reason for that. The duty recorder, which allows you to record duties, added. Chocobo saddlebag feature, added. Both wonderfully necessary things that improve my quality of life that I didn't know were necessary until you said you had them. Didn't think they could build a duty recorder in game that was this powerful. Didn't think they could give me Chocobo saddlebags anytime soon. Didn't really even think I needed them, but I do. So I'm excited about that. And an undo sort command. Awesome. Sometimes, like, I'll use the sort command, get kind of things kind of general, and then I'll put things where I want them, and then you hit sort by accident, and you're like, no! Fine, you can fix it, you know? And so that's really the big things for me. That was the big changes. My class got better, in my opinion, based on what I'm reading and based on what it looks like everybody else got. looks like a few of you got hit. So let me go over a couple quick comments that I saw as kind of a short, almost community feedback type thing. Going to them right now. Here we go. Alright, and so Fane said, in terms of DPS for Warrior, what is better? 30% damage for 20 seconds or guaranteed critical hits for 10 seconds? And Joshua went on to explain that direct hit is vastly superior, and so you see things like your burst DPS goes down, but DPS per minute may be more consistent and more even. And this is an interesting point. Situation is everything. When they make these changes, on its face, it could be like, oh, that's really going to hurt me, or oh, that's not going to affect me. But when you see big changes like this, you have to also put it in context of we haven't gotten into the new fights yet. And so if the fights are shorter, or if the fights have a lot more phases to them, burst DPS becomes critical. If the fights are a lot more where they're just trying to wear the healer down with just constant damage that's accelerating, and it's basically a race between you and the boss for who dies first, then that constant helps you, because people who can burst down the first 5% of the boss, but then they drop into this lower constant DPS per minute, that's not helpful. And so a lot of these changes, it's easy to say this is vastly superior in the context of the current game, but this is something that can change over time. The next one is Anthony Solis. Those summoner nerfs suck big time. We needed a decent damage AoE, and it's basically useless now. It is possible that they got things just wrong, or it is possible that you were actually maybe too powerful, which is what Azure Moonstar kind of said. It was too strong. I'm seeing him pull tanks off aggro, right? That's a problem. And you even acknowledged going back and saying, yeah, I could give you that. Maybe the problem was me. And that's the option. If you have a DPS class that's pulling aggro off the tanks, you either need to buff the tanks or nerf the DPS class. And so in the context of all the classes, especially as the game adds more classes, sometimes it's easier to whack the mole that's standing out as too high rather than bring up the tide of everybody else. And other times it's like, you know what, if we just gave everybody a 10% buff in varying ways, we could probably get it pretty close to balanced. And with new content comes a new range of balancing. So it's a constant hard game that the developers have to go through. So I want to cut them some slack, but I also haven't been in the game yet to see if they really improved it or not. And then the last one I want to kind of say was Roche and Rock. Love how they can completely rework Warrior, but barely touch Dark Knight. Like, we need a legitimate rework for things for Dark Knight. One more buff and a dot would be fantastic. I agree with you. It is hard to do this. When you see so few changes for Dark Knight, it's like they spent all their time on Warrior and then go, oh crap, deadline's here. That can be really frustrating. I would just encourage you to keep at it, and you don't know what their plans are. Maybe they have plans for Dark Knight down the road, and maybe they have changes for the way new bosses will be in the future, and they're going to kind of steer those and put Dark Knight back on top. I think this is a game that encourages you to try out other classes, so that if you feel your class is dropping to the bottom of the meta for the way you like to play it, the way you like to feel, try something different. You know, it has gotten incredibly easy to level other classes. It is very reasonable to say that if you're not having fun on a class anymore, maybe this is the patch where you start doing as many dailies as you can per week, leveling dailies, towards that second class. Because as soon as you have like two classes, especially of different roles, you really have a lot of flexibility that if a class kind of becomes less fun for a while, you can peek in on it when you're with friends, and that's a good fit for that group. But the rest of the time you can focus your energy over somewhere different. So that would be my thoughts, because did they break the classes? It kind of looks like they broke a few of them, but I don't know. My first impression is that there's no way you can make this many changes to a few and this few changes to others and keep it that balanced. PvP, it looked like it was a pretty consistent number of changes for each class, but PvE, it was very much steered towards Warrior was obviously the big winner when it came to the number of changes they want to make. I don't know if that makes them the big winner overall in gameplay. We'll just have to find out. But definitely in the number of hours and attention that they gave to it, that was a lot to change. So I'd love to know what you guys think in the comments below. This has been Chris with Work to Game. Hopefully this kind of sums up what you can look forward to in the patch. It's what I look forward to. I encourage you to go read the notes or listen to Brian's full-length video if you just have time to kind of leave it running in the back of your mind. It is a very long set of notes. Hope you guys have a fantastic weekend, and I will see you next time.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. Brian, do you think there's anywhere they could catch us in the meantime?
Right now, Chris, we're probably on Twitch. If it's probably in the afternoon, it could be you. Sometimes you see my face. And we also found this random guy, named Kevin on the street somewhere.
I accidentally left my password written on the side of my car.
Oh man, that was really a big mistake. But guys, we really appreciate it if you guys hit the link in the description below for our Twitch page. We'd love to see you over there. And you can even subscribe to us over on Twitch.
If you're Amazon Prime, that could even be free.
Oh my gosh, what a deal.
Well, cool. Well, thanks guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Take care.